Alright, so on lap 1, there was an incident involving Christian Rasmussen and Santino Ferrucci. Sadly, that was one of the first of many incidents Santino would be involved in. And for Rasmussen, that was as far as he made it through the race. Turn 1 was extremely chaotic this race. I'm not sure if maybe it was because of the grip not being at that specific corner, but a lot of incidents, and I mean a lot of incidents that you'll find out later on in the video, took place at that turn. And it was definitely the number one spot to sit at if you were attending that race. And then on the restart on lap 5, there was an incident involving Scott Dixon and Augustine Canapino. A lot of people were throwing cards at Dixon, playing responsibility for the incident. But when you look at the onboard, you can clearly see that Scott had done everything correctly. He took his line and stayed with it, and it's not like he could move anywhere closer to the left, because if he did, he'd make contact with the wall. So, but I have seen online some people have been saying that was Scott's fault, and I completely disagree. I think Augustine was really, that was his own fault at that point. He could have moved over a little bit to the right to give Scott a little bit of room coming up to the corner. Up until lap 54, the race was pretty traditional. Everybody coming in for their stops, nothing majorly controversial happening. But then on lap 54, there was an incident involving Linus Lundqvist and Teo Porcher, who was filling in for for Alexander Rossi for the race. But it was simply just a who is going to brake later, and sadly, both of the drivers did not have a good outcome in that. Specifically, really, Linus. Teo Porcher luckily just brushed the wall a little bit and was able to stay on the lead lap. And then on lap 57, Marcus Ericsson and Felix Rosenqvist had a similar incident into the same turn. Felix was trying to make a pass on Marcus, but Marcus had moved on him under braking, which it depends on who really considers what's illegal and what's not illegal. In my opinion, Marcus moving over on Felix like that under braking was an illegal move. And I'm not sure if there was a penalty given to him. I wasn't ever able to confirm that. But as far as I know, it was a pretty controversial move for Marcus to do to Felix. And because of that, Felix locked up and basically got in front of Marcus's racing line, causing for him to not being able to turn into the apex. And then with 18 laps to go, Kiffin Simpson had crashed into the wall at turn 8. He just locked up his fronts and he had nowhere to go at that point, and it was a straight head-on collision into turn 8. And then with 13 laps to go, coming into turn 1, Pato had locked his rears and lost grip, causing for him to spin out into the wall at turn 1. And this was a big pivotal moment in the race because this caused a major accident involving Pietro Fittipaldi, Santino Ferrucci, and Nolan Siegel. Luckily, Santino was okay. He got out of his car. He was fine. But that was a big blow for the McLaren team because they had an incident with Teo earlier in the race, and then 2 of their cars DNF. And then with 9 laps to go, coming into the hairpin, Scott McLaughlin came in contact with Will Power after Will Power tried to make a move on Scott. He saw the opportunity and tried to take it, but sadly Will's car just did not have any grip coming into the corner, and that caused for him to bump into Scott, and Scott hit the wall and he DNF'd. After that, the restart happened and Colton Herta basically drove out the last bit of the race by himself, with Kyle Kirkwood being his support, defending against Scott Dixon. But Colton Herta would eventually come across the finish line first, Kyle Kirkwood second, and Scott Dixon third. So my personal opinion of the race, wow. It was pretty chaotic. At first, I honestly did think, between those laps of lap 10 and 53, I honestly did think, okay, yeah, this hybrid race, this new hybrid system is not really it's not putting on exactly the exciting show that it was projected to offer. In fact, I think it was starting to turn a little bit, the race was actually becoming a little bit less exciting compared to Mid-Ohio's race, I think. But luckily, with some cautions and some incidents, did shake things up a bit. Now, talking about the hybrid specifically, I think at this point, I do agree. It is smart now to go back to the old engine, dump the hybrid for now, have it go through further testing during the season and off season. Because this is not exactly, I'm not seeing, in my opinion, I am not seeing any kind of usage of this hybrid coming into play for racing. Sure, it gives the car extra horsepower, and you know, it can be used as a way to be given an assistance to push the pass, but from what I'm seeing on track all the time, it doesn't really look like it changes up the game that much. And if anything, it's kind of making it less, I would say. Because most of the passes that we saw were only happening due to either somebody who was just barely involved in an incident, or somebody who was on cold tires, and of course they were going to get passed by somebody on warm tires. So yeah, in all honesty, I think what they should do is they simply should just have further testing for the hybrid. It's no longer in use. Have the old engine come back for the rest of the season. Have the hybrid go through more further testing during the season, and then off season go through more further testing. And as for the tires with this new hybrid system, because I was aware of some questions about the tire with the hybrid, I think Indycar should make a new tire compound, if possible, for the hybrid, because a lot of people did have the questioning, would the race at Iowa, would that happen everywhere else in every other oval? We'll see in St. Louis in the next race. We'll see. But in my opinion, it is better to play it safe than sorry, because I do agree. I do think with this tire compound that we currently have with the hybrid obviously adds more weight to the car, and the car is about, I don't know how much more it weighs, but I think it's somewhere around 150 to 200, I believe. I believe that's how much weight the hybrid has added to the car. But yeah, with the current tire compound that we have, it will definitely probably create more races like we saw at Iowa, which was a similar incident to the 2018 Texas race, where the tire degradation was so high, it was single file racing mostly the whole time. So I think if IndyCar decides to do that kind of move, I think it would be smart. It's efficient, I believe. I know it's going to cost some money to do more further testing, but hey, it'll probably work out well in the long run. A new tire compound system going with a hybrid could be good, and it could also possibly create better racing. Because I now agree with Ed Carpenter now at this point. I agree with him. This series now has a hybrid engine just to call themselves a hybrid engine used series. And sure, you can brag all you want for what you have, but if it doesn't bring in, good results, well, nobody's going to want to stick around or put their money and time into it. So that's my personal opinion on this whole thing with the race and the hybrid. Let me know how you guys feel about it, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.